Hola amigos and welcome back to another episode of La Vida Verde podcast. I am your host Matthew Human, just back from the Envision Festival in Uvita, where I was emceeing the village stage all weekend, presenting workshops. It was a lot of fun, and I ran into our guest this week, my friend Michael Numinous. We just know him as Numinous. Is a bardic rapper and the chief visionary officer of Hawthorne, a community-powered permaculture farm and venue in Asheville, North Carolina. I've had the pleasure of playing there a couple times. It's a project very similar in mission to ours here at Finca Vida Verde, so I'm very excited to talk to him. I think it's going to be a great conversation, so we hope you enjoy. Michael Numinous.
Matthew Human.
Welcome to La Vida Verde podcast.
Thanks. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure. You're more handsome in person, I have to say.
Why? Thank you so much.
So
yeah.
different on
You too.
online. I'm just kidding. I met this brother at Korea's out chasing iguanas in the yard here. I met this brother at Punta Mona for the first time. You were taking, a permaculture course there?
Yeah, sure was. Yeah, with Stephen Brooks.
Yep, Stephen, who has been on our podcast and one of our gurus of the Valley. Mm-hmm. And I've also had the pleasure of being at your project. So it's kind of interesting because we both started these projects around the same time, both right around COVID time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually saw this kind of early in the early days, the year before COVID. I think you were maybe not just getting going, but it was in the early years.
Right. Yeah. I had the land and I was living here, but the project that was Finca Vida Verde, it was Finca Vida Verde, but the business entity and the vision of the event center had yet to blossom. So yes, that's right. You guys came here as part of the permaculture group, or you came after or something.
It was after we did a tour. I think Starhawk was on the bus with us, and we did a tour of eco villages, and you hosted us. So I kind of got to see you flex as an event space. We came in, you fed us, you watered us.
I did. I fed you.
You fed us. Yeah. I don't know if it was you personally, but your team here.
Probably was me.
Probably was. Yeah.
Anyways, well, thanks for that reminder. And so I want to talk about Hawken and Hawthorne, but I think it's also important to just kind of talk a little bit. We always like to have a little bit of history of who are we talking to? Where did you grow up? Just give us a little, the 5-minute, quick interview of
the quick version.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I grew up in the Northern Virginia, DC area, so many people. I'm grateful to be from there. Grateful to have escaped the gravity of that area as well. A lot of smart people. But I wasn't finding the sort of heart connection I was looking for. I went down to school at Virginia Tech. I swapped my major around a bunch of times before figuring out English Lit was kind of asking the least of me. But I did get to meet Nikki Giovanni while I was there, which is a really cool connection.
Who's Nikki Giovanni?
She's a famous beat poet from the civil rights era. Okay. Actually, she's still going on tour. She just retired Virginia Tech. But yeah, shout out to Nikki Giovanni if you're out there. But yeah, so I went to Virginia Tech. I putzed around for a little while. I went down to Florida. I waited tables. But eventually my path led me towards the natural and organic food scene. I got a job with a natural food chain called Earth Fare.
Earth Fare in Asheville.
Yep. Yeah. Based out of Asheville. I was in Knoxville at the time.
Oh, right. Because they started in Knoxville, I think. Or they had one in Knoxville.
I think that's kind of my whole entry into activism was through the food scene. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was now. Jamie Oliver, the food revolution, we were all kind of realizing how messed up the food system was, at least my generation was. People had known before that, but a new wave of consciousness was coming in around the food revolution. Mm-hmm. So I got a job with Earth Fare. I did marketing and community relations.
Oh, you were working for the business. You weren't scanning groceries and stuff.
No. Well, actually, that's what I went on the website to apply for because I really didn't know what I was going to do. And when I went on the website to apply to be a cashier, because I figured I was spending all this money on kombucha, when I went into the store, that I might as well just get an employee discount. Uh-huh. When I went on the site, there was this amazing gig for a natural food marketing community relations guy. And I went down the list. I was like, damn, that's me exactly.
Uh-huh.
So got that gig. It was really good for a year or two. But it was funny that kombucha was sort of the thread that led me into the store in the first place. Because through that, I met this company called Bucci, which was at the time the first East Coast kombucha craft brewers. These two moms, they met through their kids' homeschool co-op. So I jumped in with that. I met those people and instantly fell in love. I was down at the Earth Fair headquarters in Asheville. I met the Bucci team, and it was just like instantaneous, like my first taste of grown-ups living in community doing a commerce-based project together.
Cool.
So that's what kind of brought me to Asheville, and that was the seed that grew into what's happening now.
All right. So you were in Knoxville, and then you're in Asheville, and you're working for so you started working for Bucci, or you stayed working?
Started working for Bucci back in the day. That was like where my story started to take some unexpected twists. I think maybe like the corporate level marketing job for a natural food store chain was like, you could have called that one potentially. But then, I had a decently promising thing going with them, but Bucci just pulled on my heartstrings. They were like, we can't afford to pay you, but we can give you a room and $400 a month to live on this beautiful organic farm with us. And if it does well, hook you up with some ownership shares down the road. And Bucci's done really well. So that kind of helped.
So you have ownership in
I'm
the
a part,
company.
yeah. So, I have a little corner of Bucci Kombucha,
amazing.
which has turned into a much larger Fed Up Foods company that now makes kombucha for a lot of different brands out there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it did well.
Bucci sponsored an early event we did at the Masonic Hall, the Scottish Rite Theater in the Masonic Hall in Asheville. Like, I don't remember, it was like 2000, it was 2013. We did this farm to table dinner thing called Locavore. And Bucci sponsored that.
I'm trying to remember that. I probably would have been there
Manning.
at the time.
Anyways, it was the first event they did inside this. It's funny because when I lived in Asheville in like 2000, we used to like go by the Masons Hall, and we had all these like lore and folklore about like, ooh, what's going on in there, like the Masons and their like thing, And then 2013. I get invited to play there, and I'm like, and the guy who's managing it, the head mason who's like managing the thing, was a deadhead, and he met our buddy Scott, and Scott's like, hey, what if we like open this up to the public? And ended up being the first public, first public event in like over 100 years that was open to women, I think, is what they like, men and women.
Whoa.
Totally crazy. But Bucci was one of the main sponsors.
Now they do ecstatic dances in there, and like they've started to use that space for
the
more
upstairs
events.
too.
I don't know about the upstairs. That might be like more off limits, but definitely on the lower floors they have like community dances.
Yeah, downstairs they were doing events, but this was like in the theater. It was the most amazing theater. We're not here to talk about the Masonic Hall of Asheville.
In another episode.
Super cool. We'll have another episode on that one. So you're working at Bucci, and then what brought you to Punta Mona to get what inspired you towards permaculture?
Great question. So when I was working for Bucci, we had this really idyllic scenario where we all lived and worked together on this 180-acre organic farm, woodland conservation. It's a beautiful farm, still there. It's called Herb Mountain Farm. Shout out to Mary and Hart. They're just really beautiful folks who do a great job.
Okay.
Kind of an inspiration, like what land can look like when it's been tended for multiple generations over decades. It's like gardens in perpetual bloom and just everything. It's a really beautiful example of what Appalachian land can look like when it's been lovingly tended for a long time. So we lived here. The brewery was this beautiful earth-bermed brewery, the Bucci Mamas, as we lovingly called them, and then the marketing department, the wizards behind the scenes. And that was me and my dear friend Zane.
Okay.
So we grew there for, 5-6 years, 7 years maybe. But eventually we did outgrow the space. And it was like Bucci was just really taking off. You
outgrew a 175-acre farm?
Well, the actual production facility was like 6,500 square feet. So the land was huge, but the actual brewery was
so you needed a bigger,
less than 7,000
bigger
square
facility,
feet.
Right?
So eventually we did outgrow that space, and we kind of had to make a choice. Do we want to stay this tiny little craft brewed kombucha company, relatively tiny, or do we want to sort of like break this mold and see what comes next? And when we all moved off that land, we'd had a taste of something really special and really sweet. Living in community on this beautiful farm, barefoot, strawberries, fireflies. And we tried the marketing crew, like we moved to the separate house in downtown Marshall. It was cool. It had a lot of history, but semi trucks driving by the window in the morning and church bells on CD playing all day, every day. And, we were like, I think we kind of miss that lifestyle we had in the country.
Church bells on CD?
Oh man, one day it actually
hold on, what?
skipped, like the CD started skipping. And so the church bells were just like, for like, I don't know, 45 minutes.
So they
straight.
played church bells over as the loudspeaker instead of having actual bells?
Yeah, they weren't. It was every hour on the hour from
Yeah.
like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. all day, every day, these church bells.
Yeah, Western North Carolina is a really interesting place. It's like a very interesting mix of hippies and back to the land Appalachian movement people and like very Christian kind of fun, like because the Billy Graham center was there, like Billy Graham, the famous like kind of evangelist was there with his area, and then of course it's Appalachia, so it's like hill folks and a lot of Scottish immigrants and whatnot, and it's just this, it's always been this interesting like mix of like kind of like hippie spiritualists and like Christians. So
it works though, honestly, like
totally. Well,
because there's a shared.
It makes sense. Exactly.
It makes sense. There's this ethos around like respecting each other's land and what you do on your own land.
Yeah.
There's a long history of people, making their own pants out of buckskin and, being because being up high in the mountains like that, supply chains go down, you're going to be one of the first to lose access. So people had to be resilient. And so there's some really interesting areas of crossover between what I consider to be like the more promising side, the more regenerative side of this, like, the thing we call the hippie movement, the new age movement, and then the people who've been there for, a long time. Mm-hmm. And, you ask anyone in the area, like who you'd rather have doing permaculture work or earthworks is like, would you rather have a hippie doing it or like a redneck doing it?
No, for sure.
No doubt. You want the rednecks.
Well, I think you want a bit of both because, it just depends on the person.
Yeah.
You want some rednecks on the team. I'm there.
It helps, yeah.
We're
the hippies in the
they'll
dynamic.
they'll fix the tractor when it breaks down.
They'll fix the tractor. And it's, it's interesting how like over the years starting to see you grow up in this like, oh, we're this side and they're that side. But moving to the country, starting to value people who had skills and lifestyles more similar to me, I find, maybe not politically, but just on a day-to-day sense, I have more in common now with like the conservative Christian folks, even though that's not the political group that I grew up in. It's easier for me to talk to them because they know about tractors, they know about seed potatoes, there's more to say.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily have more in line with conservatism, but I definitely resonate with like the country folk in that way. Like definitely have always, hippies and country folk have a lot in common, and they always have. I've never fortunately never seen it as an us versus them thing, and maybe when I was like 12 or something like that. But like, yeah, I've to me it's all.
But man, we're really supposed to like it feels like there's a lot of pressure for there to be that us versus them.
Really?
And my perception of the media, like living in the States and like, yeah, I catch the eye sometimes when I meet local people. I get this sense of like, oh, he's one of them. But as soon as we start talking, it starts to soften and shift, and they're like, oh, you're not so bad. And underneath it all, for all the political divide, there's a lot of I think like really people want the same thing. Like they don't want to be ruled by tyrannical powers. They want like the freedom to live healthy lives. They want to be able to eat what they want to eat and just get together and cook food and grill and be generally left alone.
I'd say you're right. So what brought you to Punta
here we
Mona?
go, yeah.
What brought you to Punta Mona?
So, okay, that's a great, thanks for looping it back. That's why you're hosting the pod. So what brought me to Punta Mona is when we left this beautiful idyllic farm or mountain farm, we were all kind of like, oh man, we really missed that lifestyle. So me and Zane and my friend Dia and a few other of the kind of the Bucci marketing squad, we were looking for land, and we found this beautiful spot. There's a whole story I won't go into now about how we came to it. But, a few of us went in together, and through the power of community, we purchased this beautiful land. It used to be known as the Hawken Ivy. We rebranded it as the Hawken Hawthorne. There's a little bit too much ivy. It was kind of like killing the dogwood trees, and it got a little out of hand.
Right, ivy's an invasive.
It's invasive English vine that just kind of like, it's pretty, but also they're pretty, but it also tears down a lot.
And so, what is the Hawthorne in Hawken Hawthorne? Hawthorne berries, Hawthorne trees.
Hawthorne trees, which are more native to the region. They're this beautiful blend of sanctuary and like a portal into the Fae realm. So they have these magical berries that are so potently heart healing they can actually save your life during a heart attack. But they also have thorns, and there's like, they say paradise is a walled garden. So the blend of holding sanctuary, boundaries, and then also this like really open heart medicine.
Okay.
So
you found the land.
Found the land. I'd been living there for 2 years. It needed the previous stewards, James and Eve, they'd done an amazing job hosting gatherings for almost 30 years for the community. It needed a lot of upkeep though. Things were sort of on their last legs in certain regards. So after the first couple of years of getting the houses all settled, I started to step back and look at everything, I was like, wow, there's a lot of space here. There's a lot of potential. I'd heard the term permaculture, but it didn't really mean anything to me. And I was sort of ripe, and I put a post on Facebook. I said, hey, if I was going to learn about permaculture, where should I go? And I think 8 out of the 10 people who responded were like, Punta Mona. That was the spot. I was like, all right, well, if everyone's going to say Punta Mona, I'll go there.
Yeah.
And so I went down there not really knowing what to expect, and getting that inspiration from Steven and seeing.
Who was he teaching with?
Itai? Yeah, Itai.
Okay, yeah. That was they were my permaculture teachers too.
Yeah, they were a great team, because Itai was like more like details, like
Itai's the one who does the book work.
Yep.
Steven's like color commentary.
And
Steven has a way of relating everything back to the Grateful Dead somehow. Like something always somehow it always ends up in a Grateful Dead lot story or something.
But he just like lit one of the things that Steven is that I love so much about him is he lit my imagination on fire. And I love just seeing him in that role. He'd be walking around like, these trees, they got to go, cut these down. Oh, we're going to plant this over here. And he's so good at excitedly walking around and talking about fruit trees, which is kind of what I needed. I needed to see that charismatic, like, whoa, he really has a vision for this place.
Totally.
And I got back from that PDC and just was like, hit the ground running. Like, things I'd been thinking about for a few years is like, we started digging springs. And don't get me wrong, we also designed for, it's like that was year 2. And now we're on year 8. So it took another couple years before I really brought the machines in, started digging ponds, terraces, But it gave me the blueprint of what all that could look like. And it was just what I needed.
Did you do because for every permaculture design course, you have a project. Did you do Hawthorne as your group project?
We didn't. If I thought of it, I might have. But he was really excited at that point with Punta Mona. They were designing some gardens to put in. So he had like a pretty clear idea of what we wanted it to be. Which obviously, hopefully, fingers crossed, Punta Mona reopens again sometime soon.
Hopefully soon.
But yeah, that's how it all tied in, the Punta Mona Connect. And then
Amazing.
Steve had ended up touring my farm last year when he came through Asheville.
Oh, nice.
And he recently, just at Envision, was like telling people, he's like, you got to go up to Asheville. They've got the Punta Mona of North Carolina is happening right now. So
it is kind of like, it's got the vibe, the same energy behind it. It's not obviously it's not on the beach in southern Costa Rica, but it's the mountains of North Carolina, which Asheville is absolutely for me, the most beautiful place in America. So you couldn't find a more beautiful place. And the farm is idyllic.
It's pretty special.
Rolling grassy hills. It must be a lot of maintenance to keep that place up.
I never, when I first came into possession or stewardship of the land, I had no idea what I was getting into. And a lot of people were quick to tell me that I had no idea what I was getting into. I just knew I was like,
people like to point out those things.
And they were right. I didn't know. And it's a lot of work. I've never worked so hard on anything in my life. I as you probably can relate, it's all day, every day. It's the first thing I think of in the morning. It's the last thing I think of at night. I've got a lot of help. I'm part of a team and a community, but I've given, the better part of 60 to 90 hours for the past 8 years to this thing. But there's nothing I'd really rather be doing. Like, honestly, being in relationship, tending land, building community, rethinking the way that we're engaging with commerce. Like, what else? What else is there to do right now?
Yeah, well, and also you guys do events. So like a couple times, I think the first time was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I was passing through and we did it. You hosted our band, or I put together a local bluegrassy band, like amazing. I have an amazing band in Asheville. Kaylin Campbell and Chad and Bonnie, and I have the best band in Asheville.
Yeah, it was sweet.
I love those guys. And so we did that, and then I met Yona. I got to meet Yona there.
Yona French Hawk.
Was he Cherokee?
Yeah, he's a Cherokee man. Yeah,
dude, that guy blew me away. He invited me to a sweat lodge the next day, and I ended up going to a sweat lodge with him. He let me lead from Mystic Springs.
Mandala Springs. Rob.
Mandala Springs.
Yeah,
me and Rob and Mandala Springs. Another cool community in that area. Mandala Springs. Rob and I co-led this sweat lodge. It was really, first of all, it was like incredible honors. I didn't feel like worthy, but it was just like amazing experience to be like put in that position, not knowing. Anyway, that happened because I was because of your place. So like, there's also connections that happen. It's also the biodiversity of people that are coming there, connections. Just know that. Like, I know sometimes it's like hard to remember, like, why am I doing this exactly? Yeah. Like I'm losing money all the time, or not. Hopefully you're not. But I know
starting to turn the corner. But if someone's looking for an easy financial investing opportunity, I wouldn't say
event centers.
Starting a permaculture event center would not be top of the list. It's definitely a labor of love.
So speaking of how are you guys? Like, are you funded? Do you need funding? Are you still
Hey, we could always use funding. That's for sure. I would say this is one of the big things because there's a lot of people trying to do a project like this right now. Punta Mona, Hawken, Hawthorne, none of these projects are unique. They're all archetypal expressions of something that is emerging in culture right now. And money is almost always one of the holdups. So, on that note, there's two things I'd say. Like, one, the most successful projects I've seen, they always have some kind of a commerce engine built into them. Whether you're making your own brand of peanut butter, whether you're hosting weddings and retreats, whether you're farming, like whatever it is, there's got to be some sort of commerce, unless you just, have an incredible angel investor or you're independently funded. Sure. But even that usually works to the detriment because it's good to have something that everyone's building together, And the other thing is like,
so do you have that, by the way?
We do, absolutely. Yeah, and I'll talk about some more of that.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, so basically our community, there's three big things that are happening all at the same time. The first is the community. We need a core group of people who live, who steward, who tend the land. The community is the hearth of everything that we're doing. That's what ties all the magic together. They're also the workforce that help run all the events, but I'll get to that in a second.
How big is the land?
There's 50 acres. Around half of it is cleared, and then half of it is the forest that runs right up to Pisgah National Forest.
And how many people live there?
There's around, it oscillates, but right now I think we're around 12 adults and 2 kids who are there part-time. Okay. So, 10 to 14-ish, in general. The second part of the 3 pillars of the land is permaculture and regenerative agriculture education. So we have a goal of being relatively food sovereign. We still like oat milk ice cream every once in a while we can get it. But, we're not going like
you can grow oats there, though, dude. You can make your own oat milk ice cream.
We could make our own oat milk ice cream. But, for the most part, we're trying to grow as much of our own produce as possible.
Yeah, so you guys, the gardens there are like amazing. Like you fed me straight. I went and had a farm to table meal when it was awesome.
That's something we're growing more than we can like personally harvest at this point. We have gotten to that point for certain crops at least. And so we've started to do these like farm to table supper clubs. And then when we do shows, people who are in our private membership association can like eat farm to table. When we have weddings, that's something cool that we offer is like, we'll cook you food right out of the gardens or pick you flowers like right from the land.
Private membership association.
So that's something you have to do in order to work around some of the regulations or work within really the regulations of feeding people, because we're not a commercially licensed kitchen. We're not, open to the public where anyone from the public can just come and eat at our establishment.
I see.
In order to eat with us, you need to have what's a public membership association.
Got it.
Which is like if you were to come to our venue and wanted to eat, you would be joining this private club for $1. And, you'll see some bars like that in the States.
I see. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So much like that we've had to figure out and work around. The systems aren't designed for projects like ours.
Well, especially, in the U.S. is hard in general. There is a lot of regulation. I mean, here Costa Rica has a lot of regulation too, but it's mostly around environmental stuff. It's not so much around like, how many people can live on a piece of land. They're not so specific about that. The only thing they are very intense here about how close you are to a spring. If you're within 100 meters of a spring, it's a no-go. Like they will pardon me. Oh, this is my podcast. I can swear. They will move your ass out of that area. Yeah, no, we don't need to do it.
So and then there's one more, the other pillar. So we have community, we have the regenerative farming and education component. And then the last piece is revenue generation and events. Something's got to pay for the party. There's got to be some commerce engine, And that's weddings, retreats, workshops, concerts, classes, hospitality, things that really help us spread our culture out to the world and also create an avenue for reciprocity with the people that we're hosting.
Yeah. It's really fun, man. I really enjoy every time I go there. And you also host like local kind of holidays. Like I know you did but you do Beltane there too.
Yeah, Big Beltane, as our friend Jeremy insists we call it. Now the proper Celtic pronunciation is Beltane. Yeah. I know. That's what everyone says.
I don't know Jeremy. I don't know about that, Jeremy.
He's got an Irish Celtic mystery school up there, so I'll defer to his.
Okay.
Yeah, but Beltane, aka Beltane. We host almost every year.
Halloween
and Samhain. Yeah.
Samhain.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, if you want to be fancy and Celtic-y pagan about it. But yeah, those are the kind of like the three things that come together. And then there's a lot of back end administrative work. Like right now, we're working on becoming a nonprofit. That's going to shift the way that we engage. And, we already have a tax exemption as a farm. By generating $10,000 a year of agricultural revenue, you get tax exempt in North Carolina.
Wow, so you guys are making money off your farm.
So I want to give shout out my partner Rachel, who's off camera.
She's in our studio audience.
She's
in front of a live studio audience.
But she had this incredible idea. Generating $10,000 a year of agricultural revenue is a hard thing for small farms to do. And what we did is that everyone who lives in the community, there's 12 of us, like I said, they pitch in $111 a month for the community CSA fee. That basically covers the cost, not just seed starts, materials, but we have one full-time community member during the growing season who gets paid by the community to be the champion of growing food.
It's brilliant.
So that means that through all the community built in, we generate, that amount of revenue for the farm every year.
How much? You said 100 and something?
Just 10,000 a year.
111 a month or something?
Yep, 111 a month, yeah.
Yeah, for a CSA box full of food, every week or something?
Yep, and like a full-time garden manager to like be the person, because it's hard. Like you see, it's with everything we're doing, having a champion who's really focused on the garden and is going to do all the work it takes to tend such beautiful gardens. It's that's a lot of work there. I know how much work that is, and also the climate is much. It's nice because it's like fertile land. It's got a good vibe there for growing food. For sure.
You see how dry it is, dry and rocky it is here. Mm-hmm. We don't have the topsoil. You guys have got a lot of topsoil.
We're building it. It's such a tragedy to think about like what the land used to look like before it was exploited and tilled down and plowed, because by all accounts, like been listening to a lot of Wendell Berry, and he talks about how there used to just be feet of topsoil. Right. That we can only imagine what that used to look like.
Same here. Two things I want to talk about before, because we don't have we're short on time, but I want to talk about, you mentioned your mom played a pivotal role in this whole transformation thing. Yeah. What happened? Can you want to talk about your mom a little bit?
Yeah. Happy to talk about that. At this point, it's getting easier, but I think trying to think about like what parts of my story are actually special or unique from 100 other, permaculture farm people you could have on the podcast.
Well, I have so many people that have their own permaculture eco event center. I mean, so many of us.
But there are a bunch of people out there doing that work. I think the part of my story that would be one of the more valuable pieces to share is this journey I went through, like right at the same time that me and my friends bought this land together. A month before we moved on, my mom passed of environmentally caused lung cancer. Never smoked anything a day in her life, unlike me. She died of pollution, and I had a couple of years to actually like let that sink in and like feel what does that mean? Because we talk. I have this thing about like the words climate change. Like it's such a inadequate way. It's vague and it's not personal, and it's like such a climate change. Does that mean the sea levels are rising in Malaysia, or like it's very abstract. But what we're really talking about is like environmental catastrophe, like loss of biodiversity, loss of topsoil, loss of like the cleanliness of our air, of our waters, and that has a real effect, like not just on my mom, but of a very large number of people who are dying actively of environmentally caused illnesses right now. Like that is climate change. Yeah. And so I had sort of a front row seat to grieve that process and to get really clear. And, I wrote a piece about, so my mom was dying like right during the height of Standing Rock. You remember when stuff was really intense at Standing Rock? They were literally spraying people with hoses in the middle of the night.
Freezing cold winter. Yeah.
And I'm sitting next to my mom, like on her deathbed, like watching this footage, crying for multiple, like the assault on our mother, the assault on my mother, just seeing both of these things sort of overlap and just kind of got broken open by grief. And this land was the lifeboat that I climbed into through that grief. It's like I was pretty bummed out about people in general, like the whole, people are a cancer on this planet or whatever. But it's not people. It's like this certain strain of industrial, late stage, weird ass capitalist, like whatever, people have been living harmoniously on this planet and I think we have to remember that. Like we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Sure. there's a lot of good people who know how to live in right relation, and I wouldn't say I'm one of them, but we're on a path of trying to come back.
I would say you are one of them.
Gosh, I'm in my own. I'll be my own harshest critic here, because like I know behind the scenes there's still so much trash. There's still so much, like,
we could do better. But
we're so far from perfect.
But there's no perfect. But you're trying. You're. I mean, dude, you're growing your own food organically on a farm.
We're definitely trying. Like, it's just like it's going to be a multi-generational process. Sure. Like, I can't think of anyone who in one generation is going to heal what's taken many generations to lose. But we can at least do our part and start it. And like maybe my kids will do better than I did. They'll look at me as some barbarian. I can't believe you're still using disposable razors. Or
check out this beard.
Look at this fresh
You are
cut.
A barbarian.
I asked you even if there was a fresh barber in there.
There is, and we're gonna hook you up in San Mateo. Cool. You mentioned that you wrote a piece for your mom. Could you perform it, or do you have it?
I could, yeah. There was a different piece I was gonna do, but I could certainly
let's do that one separate.
Let's do it.
I want to do the one you wrote for your mom.
Yeah, sure.
And then if you don't mind, we'll do the permaculture one after.
Yeah.
And so we'll put that on the Patreon.
I actually wrote at Punta Mona. While I was there, I was sitting on a hammock. I met this woman who just was carrying a lot of darkness and heaviness in her eyes. I could see it and I could empathize and relate to it. And we had this beautiful conversation. And while we were talking, I just got to paint the picture because this metaphor comes up in the poem. While we were talking, she cried this one single tear. And we were sitting on a hammock looking at the ocean. And in her tear, I was like doing the poem. And as it came down her face, I saw the ocean, the sunset. It was all like reflected in this tear.
Wow.
So anyway, and then she walked away and I wrote this poem. A little bit of kindness goes a long, long way when you're building family out of strangers that you've met along the way. I soak in ultraviolet rays at the zenith of my day and study how the world displays patterns DNA has made. I witness sunlight sit in your saline drip. I know your inner world's an iceberg and this tear's a melted tip. From my poem, a stone skipped across the surface of your fate. I see it ripple down your face, releasing trauma now displaced. In my wake, please take this simple truth I've conjured up. Hold on to this reminder that you've always been enough and that you'll never be alone. Our wisdom's found in painful growth. And then you get to embody what you know, where your heart's allowed a home. I've got a stack of journaled tomes, been fleshing out these hollow bones with some marrow in these poems. I may be famous, still unknown, but Numinous, your shit is dope. What are you doing? Why the wait? With myself I conversate. Well, first of all, a wizard is never late. I had to make a jump from good to great and pull my sword up out the lake. It took me years to integrate. After my mom passed away, pollution pulled her breath away. She never smoked a single day, and sitting by her dying days while Standing Rock and water sprayed, that Thanksgiving I just prayed for death's mercy. Some protection for this woman that I love. Both the one who gave me birth and then the one who we are from, the one who's orbiting her son. This child spun. She was out of love from my father, but I can still see my shriveled mama's thirsty lips parched while oil's poisoning our water. Brave protectors are being slaughtered by police with no honor. And even though it was 10 below, out in that frozen tundra snow, shit, I wanted to go, because that looked like an oasis as I literally watched my mother's body decompose. That used to be my home. And now death amends the garden bed out of which I've grown. So I got one mama to defend and one to let go, and my tears start to flow. 2 separate streams, one for each cheek, 'cause I was drowning down in grief. My mama's fading into sleep, her rhythm shallow as she breathes, and I just sit and bear witness to these last lessons left to teach. Received, blessings to the seed, a newfound serene, keys to the queendom, with an asterisk kissed kind of freedom. Bargaining and pleading, stoically I reasoned, though my thoughts felt like treason, that it isn't odd that the world is going to keep things even. 'Cause our cancers echoed answer in this world of metaphors is correspondence we cannot afford ignore anymore. We are a part of this world. And if we're poisoning the wells, we're poisoning ourselves. So, yeah, I've had some shit to figure out. My Saturn return saw pine cones burned in retrogrades of shame and doubt. I've kept my tongue holed up in mouth till I remembered that I'm about getting clear, staying present and here, to witness family work undone and heal some old wounds inked in crimson blood, so I can trust and understand in the essence of who I am that spirit always has a plan, that we're being humbled by the land on which we stand, made worthy for some cause that we're serving. We ride this threshold with the sea. It's a slowly churning tide of oceans rising up, and I've been skimming butter down from cream. I got some poetry for y'all to read, and everything I've earned and learned I'll offer you for free as we keep swimming into destiny. Blessed life and blessed be my precious kindred entities.
Damn, brother.
Thanks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you did that one.
Yeah, it's kind of long, but
No, that's beautiful, brother.
thanks. Yeah.
I'm glad you stayed with the English program.
Yeah. English lit,
English lit.
Thanks, Nikki Giovanni.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank
Thanks,
you
bro.
so much.
Absolutely.
Numinous. And will you do the permaculture?
I will if we have time.
Yeah, we'll do it. What we'll do is we're gonna close up this episode and we'll have it available as a separate on our Patreon.
Oh yeah, you got to become a Patreon subscriber though.
Right.
Yeah, if you want to hear the bonus tracks.
Speaking of creative funding of these projects, we were talking earlier about this, and Rachel was asking me like, so what is the thing? What do you do with your Patreon? I realized I never really tell anybody like what is, but it costs money to produce these episodes. So that's one thing. So you're also, not only when you support our Patreon, you're not only supporting, actual working people, but also we need a new solar system. And so talk about climate change or whatever you want to call it. We need a new solar system right now. So to power these lights that we're here, and that's our way of like kind of one way that we're doing things differently is by using these solar power systems. So consider joining our Patreon, and you can listen to Numinous do his permaculture. What do you call it? Permaculture rap?
Yeah, I'm a bardic rapper, tying the lineage of hip hop in with like the Celtic lineage of the bardic storyteller. So I've definitely got my own flavor, and I'm Numinous the Bard. If you want to find me, I'm on all the platforms, Spotify, SoundCloud, all that.
Numinous the Bard.
Yep.
Hawken Hawthorne is the spot.
Yep.
Michael Numinous, thank you, my brother.
Always a pleasure, Human. Good to see you, man.
Matthew Human. This is La Vida Verde podcast. We release episodes every Tuesday on YouTube. You can also listen on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Facebook, Finca Vida Verde, on Instagram, at Finca Vida Verde CR. You can support our Patreon. We've already talked about that. And
it bears repeating, though.
It bears repeating. I'm looking forward to this episode. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Pura
Much love.
vida.
See y'all in Asheville.
Yeah.